Good evening, everyone. My name is John Hickey. I'm the chairman of the Westwood Board of Selectmen, and it's my pleasure to open up this evening's event. This is a formal meeting of the Board of Selectmen, so on behalf of my colleagues who are with me, Michael Walsh and Nancy Hyde, I want to thank you all for joining us, and most especially those who are here as recipients and their families. Before I turn it over to Marge, I just wanted to make note to those who have not been here in the past that on the back of the program there is a quote that is attributed to Roy, and I've kept this on my bureau at home for many years. And in my world, with elderly parents and 3 young children, I am truly appreciative for those in our society who make this country tick: the Little League coaches, the PTA parents, and the neighbors who shovel my parents. So with that spirit, I want to welcome you and thank you all for coming. And I want to most especially thank First Parish and the congregation for having us to this new, beautiful facility. We are truly fortunate to have such a great space in Westwood and to have neighbors who are willing to share it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marge. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Roy London Humanitarian Award Committee, I'd like to welcome you to this special night. And the flowers next to me come from Roy and Ellie's garden in honor and memory of them. And then I would like to call on Pastor Christopher Dodge to please do opening remarks and the welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to First Parish, and we're glad to have everyone here. You'll hear many stories about Roy tonight if you haven't heard them already. But 3 things I think of when I think of Roy: his love for the general wide community of Westwood, but also his love for this church. He was a member here and one of its pillars, and certainly also his love for his wife, Ellie. And we are blessed by his legacy here and the ways he supported us and gotten us to this time. And it's nice for us as a faith community that this week, not only do we get to host the Roy London Award, but this Saturday, little plug, we have a concert out on the patio that's from the Ellie London Memorial Fund. That Roy set up so we could have beautiful music for the whole community. So it's a week of remembering the Londons and the saints of the church, and also the great humanitarians and beloved people of Westwood. So, welcome.
I know the next thing in your program say that we're going to do the picture of the recipients, but we're going to do that at the very end. And I'd ask that as soon as the ceremony is over, that the recipients would come to the front immediately and join Christine, wherever she's wandering around here somewhere, up front here to get the picture taken. Okay, thank you. It's my great pleasure at this time to introduce Dan Burke, President and CEO of the Arc of South Norfolk and LifeWorks, Inc. He said we could cut his resume, but it's much too rich to do that, so you're going to hear the whole thing. Dan is originally from Dalton, Mass., and received his Bachelor of Science in Rehab Services with a minor in psychology from Syracuse University. Dan and his wife, Susan, live in Marshfield and have 2 adult children. In addition to his professional career, he has also served as a founder and longtime board member of the Boys and Girls Club of Marshfield, and as a board member and coach for Marshfield Youth Basketball. Dan serves as the president and CEO of LifeWorks, Inc. and the Arc of South Norfolk, long known as SNARC. Both of these agencies are headquartered here in Westwood. These two agencies, while legally separate organizations, are affiliated through many shared resources. These two agencies services individuals with development and intellectual disabilities in towns of Westwood, the South Norfolk County area, and the city of Boston. The services of these two agencies include residential supports, employment support, community-based day programs, the ABLE Therapeutic Center, their Family and Autism Support Center, Harbor Counseling Center, and social and recreation programs. The ARC has been a mainstay of supports for people with disabilities since its founding in 1954, and I will ad-lib here by two members of First Parish. And today, these two agencies serve over 2,200 people with a staff of nearly 500 between them. Dan has been with these agencies since 1983. He has been the president and CEO since 2010. Prior to that, he served as vice president of LifeWorks for 7 years. His services served as the program manager for this program for 2 years, then served 7 years as the residential program director for LifeWorks, and 7 years as the director of employment services for LifeWorks. Dan also volunteered for Special Olympics through the ARC for over 25 years, coaching basketball, softball, and senior sports. In addition to his duties for LifeWorks and the ARC, Dan serves on the board of directors of ADDP, a Massachusetts trade organization of intellectual and development disability providers in Mass. As a member of the board, he serves as the co-chair of their Day Service Committee. He is also a member of the ARC of Massachusetts Council of Executives and has been named to the Massachusetts Autism Commission by Governor Charles Baker. It is my great pleasure to present Dan Burke to you.
Margie, I'll make sure I edit that the next time. That's what.
No, it had too much wonderful
No. I see the picture of my friend Roy, and he would be teasing me mercilessly about having to break out my cheaters because he knew me when I was much younger. So thank you very much, and good evening to all. And what an honor and tribute it is for myself and for the many people we serve to be able to talk about our friend and my friend, Roy London. And I thought today, what a beautiful ceremony and a great hall on this absolutely beautiful day. We know how much Roy loved flowers and gardening, and just after the last month, the last few months we've had to think that today, on this beautiful day, that it's really what spring is to come, though I think with the weather today, we're already into summer, right? So, but I just thought what a great day for Roy and for Ellie. In my role as the president and CEO in ARC of South Norfolk and LifeWorks, I am honored to take a few minutes to talk to you about Roy. As Marjorie said, our services reach over 2,200 children, teens, and adults with disabilities, and Westwood has been our home for nearly all of our 64 years. We are, for those who don't know, right down the street on Clapboard Tree Street. And as I said to Reverend Dodge when they came in, there is nothing better to talk about Roy London in this building and about our agency because of the partnership between First Parish Church and the ARC of South Norfolk and the history and LifeWorks and the history of our agencies. As Marjorie said, two of the proud members of this parish helped found our agency, the legend of Jane Smith and Bart Smith and so many others that have been involved in this church, as well as the individuals we serve. And this is where Roy came to join us from, and we are just so honored. I had the opportunity for over 6 years to work with Roy in his role on our board when I served as the vice president and when I first started as the CEO, right up until he passed away. Roy was essential in advocating for our mission at LifeWorks. The mission focuses on housing and employment opportunities for people with disabilities. I think Mike Gillette can tell you that Roy would have been knocking on the door talking about when can we help Dan look for another property in our town. When I look at the remarks and the programs of the past few years of this award, I'm absolutely humbled by the incredible work that Roy did in the town of Westwood. You name it, Roy did it, from Finance Commission, Public Works, Historical Society, Personnel Board, and many other things. It was an honor for the people of our agency that Roy chose to dedicate some of his precious time to our agency. I often remarked to Roy that he was one of the busiest retired people I knew. Roy's role with our agency reflected how Roy came to be such an important and influential figure in the town of Westwood. He was unassuming, friendly, supportive, and respectful. So much of what he accomplished he did by establishing relationships with people one-on-one, sharing his wisdom when asked, and offering his opinions in a way that made you chuckle, smile, reflect, and then 5 minutes later, when Roy was older, he would work his way slowly away from you. You would think, man, that guy is really smart. It is fitting for our agency, I said, that this take place right here in First Parish Church. Roy joined our board through the outreach of our founders and some of the members of this church, and one of the most influential people in the lives of people with disabilities in this region, and certainly this town, Jane Smith. Jane, along with a number of other members of this parish and so many members of this town, are incredible figures in the history of our agency. Roy and Jane connected so many members of this parish to our agency. Whether it was Peter Lovett when I first started as vice president, or Reverend Dodge when he started and joined, the tradition of a strong supportive relationship between the First Parish Church and our agencies is something that's been carried on for many years. Roy's role in our agency reflected the role that Roy played in his parish, in the town, and the lives that he touched. Roy would often attend our board meetings, take in much of the material, ask some simple questions to gather more knowledge, and comment, well, I'll see you next time, Dan. Let me know what I can do. He would enter and leave with a smile and a wave. But then maybe the next day or a couple days later, I'd get a call, or if the weather was good, I'd just look out the front window, and here would come Roy up the front walk at Clapboard Tree Street. He would join me and say, you got a couple minutes? I always had a couple minutes for Roy. And he would immediately start addressing a matter that we had been discussing in our board meeting, informing me that he had spent the last few days researching since he'd left, gone to the library, looked on the internet, and shared an analysis how he thought he could help, who could we contact, who could we call, or his favorite, who or what person or agency within the town of Westwood could we go visit or talk to and see how can we make the lives of people with disabilities better. Because that was Roy. How could I make someone else's life better? Maybe that was a job, maybe that help was working together for a new home. Maybe it was help getting people to look at employing people with jobs. He would often talk about how he could work with the pastor here at First Parish to get more people involved. Roy loved to mentor others, support others, and give support to people. A few years ago, when Mike Gillette gave an introduction to Roy, he cited a famous quote to describe how Roy viewed his role in life, and it deserved to be repeated here, because I think, as the selectman said, it's so reflective of these quotes of what an important person Roy could be. It is more rewarding to give than to receive. That fulfillment comes not in the satisfaction of your desires, but in helping others, helping fulfill the needs of others. As I say that, I can look around the room and see faces nodding, because I believe that is how Roy helped so many. He looked for a way to see how he could apply his skills, his knowledge, his contacts, and his passion and interest to make the lives of others better. Roy touched so many people in this town that it would be difficult to quantify how many people he helped. The title of Mr. Westwood was perfect for Roy. Roy loved his wife, as Reverend Dodge said. He loved this parish, and he loved this town. I don't live in this town. I've worked in this town for a long time, and you never met a day that Roy didn't love this town. As you gather tonight, I would reflect back to honor this year's recipients. I would reflect back on the values and character of Roy. I have spent my entire professional life working to help embody the inclusion of people with disabilities. On behalf of those 2,200 people we serve, I'd like to thank Roy and the people of Westwood for being our home and being such wonderful supporters of our agency. I'd like to thank all of you and the committee for asking me to speak about Roy. He was a person who made an enormous impression on me and so many others. I know that tonight's recipients will continue to carry on the great work that will reflect on our friend Roy. Thank you very much.
Before we move on to the current recipients, I'd like to ask that anybody that is here that was a former recipient of an award to please stand, give your name and your year that you received the award. I know there are some here. Okay, Bob Folsom, you can start. Thank you.
Jessica Cole, recipient 2014.
Anybody else? Oh, yeah, food pantry.
Trish Tuckton, I received it with the food pantry in 13 and with the transitional assistance team in 16. And part of the while, I have no idea what year it was because it wasn't included on the list. It's 2014 or 15.
It was 15, I believe. 15? Yeah, she's right, 14 or 15. Is there anyone else here? Thank you for being here, and thank you because I know you all continue to serve this town. I would like to now ask Barb to come forward and present the award to Janet Shepperson.
This is the problem when you win the award, you get on the committee. I was on the committee before, but anyway. Our first recipient tonight is Jan Shepperson. Jan has lived in town for 55 years. She had no problem remembering the number of years because they moved into town the very day that her son was born. And she has 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. She's an active member of the First Baptist Church, which you'll find is a common theme tonight. I think what struck us about Jan is that even in her paid positions, she's been about serving the community. She drove a school bus for 12 years, which after raising 5 kids might seem like a natural progression. She worked at Yulden's Craft Shop on the register for many years, up until its closing. And I'm sure she had to explain what a sales tax was to many of our kids who were making their first purchases on their own. And I always said I would stop being a den mother in Cub Scouts when Yulden's closed, and I did. She currently volunteers at the Hanlon School and has done so since the beginning of the property tax volunteer program. As she told me, the teacher she works with is retiring this year, but she'll continue on. But it's in her contributions in other areas that show her giving spirit. For 17 years, she volunteered at Deaconess Beth Israel in Needham, and she's volunteered at Rosie's Place. For 20 years, she's been active in the leadership of a group of women who knit and crochet baby blankets, baby hats, lap robes, prayer shawls, and chemo hats for hospitals in the area, including St. Elizabeth's and South Shore Hospital. She also volunteers at the Senior Center, where she makes crafts that are sold to benefit the center. And if there's someone in need of a ride, Jan is there. At First Baptist, she's been involved since the outset of their Kids in the Kitchen program. This program addresses 2 identified needs: an alternative after-school programming and the teaching of home skills such as sewing and cooking. Initially, she worked with kids to make blankets for the Linus Project, which provides blankets to kids in hospitals. And now, as the program has developed into cooking and baking, she helps with that. As her pastor, Stephanie Salinas, told me, she is her behind-the-scenes go-to person when she needs help, whether it be with a collation or pastoral care. When I spoke with Jan, one of her comments was, "I don't do anything special," but I told her that is exactly why she's getting this award, because she does it from a deep sense of caring for her community, not for the recognition. Well, tonight you get your recognition. And we present you the Roy London Humanitarian Award.
The next recipient is Shirley Monroe, and unfortunately, at the last minute, Colleen Campion was not able to join us. She was supposed to be the presenter. So since I've known Shirley since I was in junior high and she was in high school, I'm going to try and wing it. And if I miss something really important, because I know Shirley more as a friend, not as to all the things she's done throughout her lifetime. Doug and Leslie, speak up. Stephanie, wherever you are, speak up, because Shirley has been a backbone of this town and of First Baptist Church for many, 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 many years. As I said, I've known Shirley since we were in school together, and her husband Herb also. That my first recollection of the two of them is them looking in the gym door that was being decorated for the prom. So it's been a long time. Shirley has also, over the years, many, many years, been my neighbor down in Plymouth at Priscilla Beach. And before she and her built their own house, one of the houses that they rented down there was what is now mine, was my mother's. So we go a long way back in history. I know that Shirley has volunteered thousands of hours at the church. I know that she, you know, they say behind every successful man there is a woman, and she was the woman behind her successful husband, Herb Monroe. And Shirley also, I know, served for many, many, many years, maybe with you, Jan, over at what was then Glover Hospital, BID Needham. Okay, Doug, give me, oh, and she's got 5 kids, and one of them is here tonight, 2 granddaughters, no, two granddaughters, right. 1 son, but she has 2 sons, 3 daughters. And, yeah, how many grands? I don't know. 17? 17 grands and 17 great-grands. Good grief. All right, I honestly don't know other things that Shirley has done, except I know she has been extremely active and still is in helping at First Baptist. Doug, Leslie?
Leslie knows probably better. She's also worked at Gildan's alongside Jan.
Oh, okay.
Years. Got me my job there, thanks, ladies.
Can everybody hear her, or would you like her to come up here?
I'm coming up here.
Oh,
And she volunteered at the hospital, and she also volunteers, and still volunteers today, at the senior center, working with the students that come and do the classes, or after school program. Kids in the kitchen. I know where she is, I just don't know the name. But she's done a tremendous amount of volunteer work, and has been a great Grammy to all of our children, and an incredible great Grammy to a lot of little kids that are constantly running after her door. That's why she looks as good as she is. Yeah.
thanks, Leslie.
Yeah.
I think she was actually tied to the hip with Jan.
So
Their fees are applied.
whatever Bob said, then Jan.
Yeah.
And just to add to, her history here in Westwood, which is probably 75 years maybe, she was on 2 Sports Hall of Fame teams.
That's right, I forgot that.
So, if that's part of
Basketball.
She was on the very first undefeated track sports team in Westwood High School's history.
1949.
She is a gracious, humble spirit in all the most wonderful ways.
I can attest to that. And the other thing that I can attest to, living across the street from Shirley, with her 5 children, I never heard her raise her voice to the kids. Now, I can't say that I never did, but I never, ever Father comes home, that's right. That's right, wait until your father comes home. Yeah, okay. So Shirley, please come forward and receive the award.
Lord, I want to thank you for honoring me for this award. I am truly humbled to be accepted for the Roy London Humanitarian Award. Thank you so much for this honor.
All right, the rest of the presenters are here, so I would like to ask Danielle Sutton from our Youth and Family Services. She is the director and also a member of the Roy London Committee to please come forward to present the next award.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to introduce tonight's group recipient, the Westwood Young Women's Club, which was created in 1959 for the sole purpose of furthering the educational, philanthropic, and social life of its members and of the community. And that's a purpose to which they've held true for the past 59 years. Last year alone, the club contributed over $15,000 to the community through high school scholarships, funding for local playgrounds, and donations to the Westwood Library and the Early Childhood Council. And over the past 10 years, Westwood Young Women's Club has contributed over $75,000 to the Westwood community through similar giving. In 2017, the club also supported Dignity Matters, a nonprofit that donates feminine products to women in need, with a local drive that collected over 24,000 items. Other initiatives in town have included a calendar of local Westwood firemen, whose proceeds benefited the Muscular Dystrophy Association, support for hurricane victims in Texas, donations to the Westwood Food Pantry, as well as a toy drive for foster children in the care of the Department of Children and Families. The Westwood Young Women's Club also organizes no-cost annual townwide events like an Easter egg hunt in April, a summer concert series in July, and paid entry events like Winterfest in December and Touch a Truck in the month of May. Many people may have gone to these events and not known that Westwood Young Women's Club was behind them. As they are a nonprofit organization, all proceeds from their events go right back into the community and to the charitable initiatives the Westwood Young Women's Club supports. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome current president Katie Collins and last year's president Kim Chase to accept the award on behalf of the Westwood Young Women's Club. Come on in.
Thank you. We are so thrilled and humbled to be accepting this award tonight on behalf of the hardworking women of the Westwood Young Women's Club. And having heard about all the nominations, it's truly an honor to be awarded this amongst the other nominees tonight as well. We are so privileged to be able to carry out this service for the past 50 years that the organization has put together through like the family-friendly events and other charitable initiatives that we have put together.
Hi. With the support of local organizations and the residents of Westwood, we were able to run events, drives, and fundraisers. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to raise money, which we then contribute to the community through high school scholarships, funding for local playgrounds, and donations to the Westwood Library and the Early Childhood Council. We continue to be grateful to those who sponsor and attend our events. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your continued support and for your recognizing our efforts. Thank you.
I I was a member of the Westwood Young Women's Club when you had to leave at age 40, so I left 10 years ago. I'd like to call Mike Gillette forward to present the George and Virginia Lester Award.
Good evening. I am honored and humbled to present the next Roy London Humanitarian Award to recipients Virginia and George Lester for their dedicated service, delivering an enlightened message about the devastation caused by drunken driving. Virginia and George Lester, like most Westwood couples, raised a family, 2 boys, George and Albert, both graduates of Westwood High. George, the eldest, went on to graduate from Dartmouth College and has had a successful career as an immigration attorney. Albert, his younger brother, graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science and went on to a career in programming weather pictures for forecasting on local television stations. Albert was an avid cyclist, and he decided to change his career and pursue a degree at Harvard University in education to teach high school mathematics and science. Both George and Albert, as you can clearly see, had the spirit of giving back, which was instilled by their parents. In June of 1992, Albert accepted an invitation from a friend to ride for 24 hours in a cycling marathon in Fulton County, New York, 14 hours and 228 miles into the ride. Shortly after midnight, Albert encountered an 18-year-old intoxicated driver on a curve in a rural road, was struck, catapulted onto the windshield, and thrown off into a ditch. In the hours following Albert's accident, 2 Westwood police officers arrived at Lester's home in Westwood to deliver tragic news that Albert had passed away. Most every parent whose child's life is cut short in the prime of their life by a thoughtlessness of someone would naturally be embittered and even vengeful. Although Virginia and George went through such period in their grief, they came through it and honored Albert's memory by delivering a powerful message of devastation caused by drunken driving. Shortly after Albert's death, Virginia went to Westwood High School to inquire about a scholarship in Albert's name, only to be asked to speak to students about Albert's life and his tragic death. And so began Virginia and George's 17-year mission to educate students, the legislature, police officers, the governor, attorney generals, and even groups of first-time OUI and DUI offenders on all aspects of the devastation caused and that can result from driving under the influence. The style of the message that was delivered was positive, insightful, and impactful. Not only did they focus on the personal grief that they went through, cutting short of their son's life in the prime of his, but how police officers delivering of sympathy and care stayed with them for years to come. They also imparted, especially to students and OUI offenders, how such thoughtless accidents would devastate their own lives, the lives of their families, the lives of their friends, and the lives of their entire community. On a personal note, I first met Virginia and George at a hearing before the Business Development Advisory Board on the issue of whether or not Westwood, a dry community at the time, should begin to license restaurants to serve alcohol. One would imagine that the Lesters would have staunchly opposed consideration of this issue, but that was not who they were. The Lesters simply spoke out and asked that if Westwood does move forward with the proposal to license restaurants, we do so with very strict guidelines and enforcement to ensure that everyone is aware and conscious of their responsibilities. Their message resulted in the Board of Selectmen repeatedly communicating to every single licensee how serious Westwood takes the responsibility of being given the license. 17 years after Virginia Lester was asked to give her first presentation to Westwood High, she gave her last in May of 2010. George guesses that her message reached thousands and resonated with thousands of students through the years and was long remembered. Unfortunately, Virginia passed away in March of last year before we could personally honor her commitment and dedication of a cause very close to her heart. I am absolutely certain that Virginia's here tonight. She's going to join George in delivering his remarks, accepting this well-deserved 2018 Roy London Humanitarian Award. So, Virginia and George, would you please come forward?
Thank you so much. As my mother would have said, stand up straight. I sincerely thank the committee for this award to Virginia, and I consider it primarily to be for her. And I'm just sort of tagging along. And I sincerely appreciate the committee including me in this, and I thank them again. I did have a number of things I'd like to say, and I don't want to duplicate too much what Mike has said, but I'll run through some of them and tell you a little bit more about what she did and how this came to happen. I think that many of you knew her. This was Virginia, and this picture was taken in 2015, just 2 years before she died, last year, March 28th. It was taken by our son, George, and I'm sitting over here, but she's the one that really looks better to look at. So we cut me off of it, and I think it looks better that way. George, let me say this at the moment now, lives in Medfield, thank goodness. And he and his wife had a trip out west planned for a long time. And unfortunately, they couldn't give it up, so they ended up not being able to come here tonight. So I'm sorry that he couldn't be, because he would have liked to, I'm sure. The other thing that we've mentioned is this picture of Albert. And some of you have seen this before, but this was Albert. And he is really the reason, his death was really the reason we got into this sort of thing, and that she did what she did. And the picture is one of a number of poster-sized pictures I have, not all of him, but that we used in various presentations around when we went to schools and to some other places, and primarily to a series we worked with some people from Plymouth County, MAD, who gave lectures to first drunk driving offenders. They have to go to a series of lectures, and one of them is a so-called victim impact lecture, and we worked on those. Now, the reason for the recommendation that I made to her about her was her contribution to students and others here in Westwood, and also in the state, and out even in New York, because she ended up going out there and giving the same talk to a lot of schools out in New York, about 40 miles west of Albany. As Mike said, we came to Westwood in 1959 to Oak Street. It was a dirt track then. It's a racetrack now, but be that as it may, we had two sons. George was in class of 76 and Albert in 78. And George went to Dartmouth and then Northeastern Law School, and Albert to MIT. And Mike told you a little bit about what he did and what he worked, and how after 8 years at this, he had decided he wanted to change careers. So he was planning to go back to school and become a math teacher and science teacher. And I must admit that Jim Pender here at the school was one of his, how shall I say, confidants that he talked with a lot about whether to do this or not. And I think Jim helped him to make a decision. And I think Jim lives down in Hyannis now. Do you know Charlie? At any rate, I looked up, tried to find his address to see if he was local, to let him know, but apparently he was down there. And as Mike said, Albert accepted the invitation of a friend to go out to Gloversville, New York, in Fulton County for this 24-hour marathon. And he had done this kind of thing before. He had ridden from every year they have a Boston to Montreal and back ride. And he went once and did one from Paris to Brest on the coast and back. And both of those are 750 miles. And they have to be completed within, roughly a certain time. And they told us that in the one in Paris to Brest and back, that he just made the 90 hours that he was supposed to finish in. It wasn't a race, but it was a sort of a timer. And that they said he had stopped by the side of the road and tried to talk to people out in the fields, of workers and so on, and that's what, but he got back in the right time. And as Mike said, Virginia went to the school, and they said, yeah, but would you give a talk to the students? And she came home and said, I asked him, what should I talk about? And they said, well, just tell them about Albert, tell them about what happened to him, which she did. And somehow the word seemed to get around. So the calls began to come in from other schools in the eastern part of the state, SAD chapters, SAD conferences, SAD sharing days, they called them, which are a group of SAD chapters, and various things like that. And we went up to the State House and spoke up there. And let's see, here's a picture of her with Governor Weld. He gave her a pen after signing some of the laws up there. And one other thing that we did in some of the schools was to work with the AAA of Southern New England. And they set up a program where they brought certain musicians in. And this was down at Sandwich High School. And the AAA projected images, it's kind of a fuzzy image. They projected images on a big screen, and a band or somebody played, and and then Virginia gave her talk, and then the band played some more, and all the students got a CD of music. And I heard some music on this that I never heard before. But some of them were, Dan Zanes was one. Did anybody recognize him? He came here to Westwood. And another group called N-Train, which is a band based on Martha's Vineyard. I like their music, but they came and played at this thing in Sandwich. And as Mike said, after 17 years, in 2010, Virginia sort of decided that she would kind of like to retire from this. And so her last talk was here at Westwood High in 2010, and they made a video of it. And it's on the internet, and if anybody would like the numbers, you know how to do it, see me and I'll give you the numbers, be able to get it so you can look at it if you want. And I would say if you do, I would urge you to look at all of it. It takes about 35 minutes, but it's a good talk. And I think that's the thing that is the essence of the kind of things that she did. And we started off, and I never made an accurate count of all the schools or the students that she spoke to, but in those 17 years, I think it's not unfair to say that it was between 25 and 30,000 students that she spoke to. And I remember one school, Somerville had over 1,000 students in their auditorium. It was the biggest auditorium I'd ever seen in a school, but that was one that was really in big there. And so she always ended her talks with about a 4 or 5 minute video that we had made of pictures of Albert growing up. And the next to last thing before she did that, and the next to last thing before that, is that she would get the students to recite with her a little sort of a rap verse that said, keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road and your mind on your business of driving. And she would get them to doing that, and they ended up doing it 3 or 4 times until they really came out like a rap song, and she was satisfied. And then the last thing she did, let me go over here just 1 second. The last thing she did was to pull this out. This was the front wheel from Albert's bicycle. And she showed this to students, and we think it was an impressive thing, and we hope that they remembered it. And there's one little thing to comment about that, if I may. Some years later, I had to take my car to the service to get serviced, and they had a driver who took me over to the Superior Court. Because one thing I did a lot of in those days was to go and sit with families that had had people killed by drunk drivers. Some of them seemed to appreciate it, some didn't seem to care. But at any rate, I went over to do it. And the young driver who was taking me over was from Norwood. And I said, do you remember hearing a talk by a woman telling about a son who was killed on his bicycle by a drunk driver? And he said, was that the lady with the bicycle wheel? So he seemed to remember that, which we appreciated. One student, I remember, came up after her talk and gave her his fake license. He said, I'm not going to need this. So he had a license that came, been issued in New Jersey. You could buy them on the internet in those days. Maybe you still can, I don't know, but anyway, that was one thing. And we hope that others and her and this fellow had heard her message, and that somewhere there's some people whose lives were saved or injuries somewhere here in Massachusetts or out in New York, because she went out there to a lot of schools also. And once again, thank you so much for the award, and to the Roy London Committee.
So we'll now hear from Virginia.
Don't let your family down. Don't let your friends down. And don't let yourself down. Stay alive. Don't drink and drive. And don't ever ride with a drinking driver. Think of some other way to get where you're going. Fasten your seatbelt and don't speed. And passengers, don't distract the driver. And drivers, don't horse around or try to show off. And don't go playing around with the dashboard toys or those fancy little new gadgets we all have. Leave them till another time. What you're going to do, and you're going to pay attention to this because we're going to do it together in a minute. You're going to keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road and your mind on your business of safe driving. Okay, I'll say a line and then you say it. Keep your hands on the wheel. Your eyes on the road. Your mind on your business. Safe driving. Okay, let's say it more like we mean it. Keep your hands on the wheel. Your eyes on the road. And your mind on your business. Have safe driving. Now give it a little more pep. Okay. Keep your hands on the wheel. And your eyes on the road. And your mind on your business. Of safe driving. Good. Now you can have a wonderful time at the prom. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your life. Now, you've been a good bunch. We have a short video of Albert's life, and it's just a homespun something before videos became popular. And we hope it will remind you of your own life and how life is so precious, yet so fragile. But first, this is the front wheel of my son's bicycle. And don't you ever in your entire lifetime try to drive if you've been drinking. So thanks a lot. And now the video.
Thank you, George, and thank all of the recipients. And I'm going to ask Nancy to come forward to make some closing remarks, and after that, I would ask that Selectman Chair John Hickey come forward to close the Selectmen's meeting.
So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. This is the 9th year we have done this, and I think you all can experience firsthand why Roy London was such an important man and a humanitarian in his own right. I've told this story on past years. When we came together after Roy's death to determine what we could do in his honor as a town, some of us met and we talked through what was Roy all about. And we ended up our conversation saying it was all about all the things he did for other people, and it was a humanitarian role that he served. And for 9 years, you can see, we have identified very amazing people, very amazing organizations who inspire all of us to live a better life and do things for other people. So I think there are 3 people that joined us here tonight, Mr. Lester. I think your son, your wife, and Roy London were here. And I want to thank everybody for coming. Please stay for a reception. We're going to open the doors. You can enjoy this lovely patio. And on behalf of the committee, and please, the recipients come forward. I know the ladies want to go to a meeting quickly, so we'll do a quick picture of everybody together. And congratulations to our recipients.
And I know we owe Marge a round of applause. Thank you, Marge, for leading us tonight. Someone used the word humbling earlier, and I think that's the spirit that I feel right now as well. So with that, we're going to conclude tonight's event. We'll have a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Mr. Walsh. All those in favor, aye. And thank you all very much. Have a good night.